there was basically a placebo effect, that whatever the message was, since there was no message on these tapes either, the effect was determined entirely by how the tapes were labeled, not by any message that might have been on the tape. And then finally, very dramatically, Lloyd Silverman, the late Lloyd Silverman at NYU, presented subjects with a subliminal message that he called a subliminal symbiotic message of "Mommy and I are one." Okay, this sentence, "Mommy and I are one." Not even clear what that means, but "Mommy and I are one." And it turned out, Silverman reported that the subliminal, but not the supraliminal presentation of this message impaired the performance of various kinds of mental patients on various kinds of tasks, but improved task performance in people without mental illness, ordinary college students mostly. So if that's the case, then something like "Mommy and I are one" has to be the kind of thing that you can decode subliminally, okay? So far, all I've shown you is people's ability to decode single words, like in the subliminal Stroop effect, okay, or the parafoveal, the Stroop effect. "Mommy and I are one," that's pretty complicated, okay? It's 5 words, it's a complete sentence. You got to figure out exactly what it means that "Mommy and I are one," and all of that before you could expect it to have any kind of effect. All of which raises the question of what the scope is of unconscious perception. The person who has done the most work on this is Tony Greenwald at the University of Washington with a variant on the subliminal perception test known as subliminal affective priming. And here he's not looking at the denotative dictionary definition of words like blue or red or umbrella or gorilla or whatever, but simply the emotional valence of a word or concept, like whether it's a good thing, whether the word represents a good thing, a nice thing, a pleasant thing, or a bad thing, a ugly thing, or whatever. So in these experiments, subjects are presented with an affectively balanced prime word like enemy, which is a bad thing, or friend, which is a good thing, and then they're presented with an that is masked, and then they're presented with an affectively balanced target like wins, which is a good thing, and loses, which is a bad thing. And the subject's task is simply to make an affective judgment about the target, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. So you can see where this kind of experiment is going. If you get subliminal affective priming, then the affective valence of the unseen prime ought to influence these affective judgments about the target. Can you get priming effects? And the prediction is that if people are unpacking the connotative meaning of these primes, yes, you ought to be able to get the priming effects. Should be easier to judge the affective valence of the target when the prime and the target are matched in affective valence. And to make a long story short, yes, you get this, okay? So here we're looking at target prime relations, a positive prime followed by a positive target, a negative prime followed by a negative target, and all the other kinds of combinations. Here we're looking at the duration of the prime, how long it's presented. And here we've got 80 milliseconds, 40 milliseconds. Whether there's a mask present, this is 80 milliseconds unmasked, clearly perceptible prime, enemy followed by wins or whatever. And what you can see here is a lovely priming effect, which is when the prime and the target are congruent, like here, positive, positive, you get faster response latencies than when the prime and the target are incongruent, negative, positive. And again here, when both prime and target are negative, you get a priming effect compared to when they're incongruent. Now that happens when the mask is clearly visible, 80 milliseconds duration and unmasked. When the prime is presented for 80 milliseconds and it's masked, you still get nice priming effects comparing positive positive to negative positive and negative negative to positive negative. But even when the prime is presented for only 40 milliseconds masked, you can still see a little bit of a priming effect here, at least in this negative negative condition. But here you've got this nice subliminal priming effect where the mask prevents people from seeing the prime, yet the affective congruence between the prime and the target creates this kind of priming effect. Okay, I'm going to skip a couple of slides here. This is just a quick demonstration of how limited these priming effects are. Here we have the duration of the stimulus onset asynchrony, the interval between the onset of the prime and the onset of the mask. And this is the extent of the priming effect. When the prime is presented for only a very short period of time, just 17 milliseconds, you get very little priming effect. When it's presented for a little bit longer, you get a bigger priming effect up here. But when the prime mask asynchrony is very, very, very low, the priming effect pretty much disappears. Here, we're looking at the interval between presentation of the prime and presentation of the target, okay? And again, whether the prime is above threshold or below threshold, what you're seeing here is with a subliminal prime, a prime that people don't notice, the priming effect disappears rapidly over the course of less than 1 second. These priming effects do not last very long, okay? So subliminal, the superliminal priming effects, they can last for a fairly long time, but subliminal priming effects dissipate very rapidly over the course of even just half a second. So the first thing to notice about these priming effects, okay, is that they are time limited, okay? The amount of time that the prime is presented can't be too short. And the duration between the prime and the target can't be too long. What that means basically is that you can drink Coca-Cola all you want, but that priming effect will not last between the time that the subject sees the prime and the time he gets to the concession stand. It's just not going to last at all. These priming effects in implicit perception, especially semantic priming effects, whether they're based on denotative dictionary meaning or connotative affective meaning, just don't last very long at all. And I'm now out of time. Okay, we'll pick up on this affective priming business on Wednesday when we talk about the possibilities for implicit unconscious emotion. Thanks very much.